Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dominick Caiati's podcast network serving the financial needs of nurses nationwide. I'm the co-host, Jeff Roediger. Dominick, we got a very important subject today, so thanks for your time this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeff. Yeah, I'm really excited about this subject.
Okay, so we concluded the session last week on just the biggest financial planning and retirement mistakes you see nurses making. And the big topic where most of the retirement is centered is on qualified plans, i.e. the thrift savings plan for federal employees, 403Bs for your state and local, 457s on the deferred comp, and then 401Ks. So I wanted to get into that topic today because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of changes going on. And let's first get into what exactly is, a qualified plan and how does it differ than their defined benefit pension plan?
Yeah, so qualified plan by definition really is a plan that they're allowed to put in pre-tax dollars and save for the future for their retirement and defer any taxes on those contributions they're making until such time when they withdraw that money at retirement, presumably, or sometime after retirement, when they're 65 or 70 or beyond that. And it's an attractive plan because it allows people to contribute those dollars without having to pay taxes on it right now. There is another side to that we're going to get into in a future episode. By the way, we're going to save that for tax planning episode. But it doesn't always work out to everybody's benefit. I'll just say that.
So with that being said, and you and I have talked about this before. We get this question a lot. Do I keep my money in the, let's say, federal employee, because the expenses are so low, keep it in the thrift savings plan, keep it in the 403B or the 401K versus an IRA? So how do you handle that discussion?
So not to over focus on federal employees, but let's just take them as an example for a moment. So their retirement package, whether you realize it or not, is broken down to 3 individual components, and all those components are United States federal government related. So it's, of course, there's their Social Security, their FERS, their FERS annuity. I call it an annuity. Some people call it a pension. And then there's their TSP. So my first question to people when they call in and they say, "Gee, Dom, should I be here or should I be in another qualified IRA plan?" And my question back to them is, well, gee, do you want to have the U.S. government controlling all 3 of your retirement buckets? Don't you want to diversify a bit, away from the government? And then part 2 of that question is, I noticed that you have 100% of your retirement plan in the risk bucket, and you're 62 years old, you're planning to retire in 3 years from now. How do you feel about that? How would you feel if we had another major market correction like we did back in March of this year when one of the TSP funds was down 30%? So I usually get, well, gee, I wouldn't feel good about that at all. So, I like to look at it as 3 separate buckets in our retirement, Jeff, and there's the risk bucket, which represents 403Bs, 457s, 401Ks, TSP. There's the guarantee bucket, which I get to in a second, and there's the I call it the yellow bucket, the cautionary bucket, and that's your emergency fund, your emergency money, which people should generally have between 3 and 6 months salary in there.
And that's very important. The bucket strategy is something you can go over with them. And at the end, we'll give out information how they can get a hold of you for those that haven't listened in on our previous episode. So qualified plan money is not as simple and the distributions are not as, it's not as easy to plan as I think a lot of people think when they're accumulating. There's a lot of big decisions, taxation, like we just talked about, IRA versus keeping it in the qualified money, when to take it, which leads me to the final question for you. There's a lot of changes going on, and can you give the audience what has happened at the end of 2019? Qualified plan money, some codes were changed. Could you get into that a little bit?
Well, some of the changes that occurred at the end of 2019 going into 2020 are actually good changes. I'll give you one example, the RMD requirement, the required minimum distributions, which means the age at which the government forces you to start withdrawing that qualified money so they can get their tax money because they gave you a deal for all these years. That's been increased from age 70 and a half to 72. So it gives people another year and a half to plan for that, what's going to be evident in the future, that tax
Right.
burden they're going to have.
That was
That's
long
one of the,
overdue.
yes, yes. One of the other good things that came out in the COVID pandemic is they've, there's an act that was created for people who either have COVID or their family was affected by somebody in their family, in their household who was affected by COVID and or, lost their job or something like that. They're allowing withdrawals from qualified plans without any penalties at all. If you're 59 and a half or under, there's a 10% penalty, plus you have to pay taxes on ordinary income. For any monies you take out, you withdraw from your qualified plan, and they've waived that under certain conditions. You can take up to $100,000 out now, and that's good until the end of this year, to December 31st, 2020.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, yep.
So even more reason people need to reach out and contact you with questions. Something that Dominick and his firm offer is a free consultation. So Dominick's firm is not a non-profit. He's got to feed his family and he's got some children in college, but the initial consultation is of no cost. So you need to take advantage of that. And let's tell the audience again, give them your website so they can look up more information on you if they want to contact you directly.
Yeah, sure. So it's www.caiatifinancial.com, and Caiati is spelled C-A-I-A-T-I. So www.caiatifinancial.com.
Okay. And you can also reach Dominick through our toll-free number. That's 888-545-8840. 888-545-8840. Just let us know you attended this podcast. And we have two great websites where you can get additional information. If you're a federal employee, go to fedchecklist.com, fedchecklist.com. There you can post questions, comments. We'll get them to Dominick and his team to follow up with you. Any questions whatsoever on your benefits or financial planning. If you're state or local, work at a university, then go to publicpensionchecklist.com. And that site's important because you can pull up through a third-party group of economists your grade of your particular pension system. This is unbiased third party that has researched all public pensions across the country, and they're going to give you a very detailed grade on how your pension system's doing. And I think in the world we're in right now, you need to understand how solvent your pension is. It has a major impact on your retirement. So great information today, Dominick. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
So let's tell everybody the next session, what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, so I'm excited about the next one. We're going to be talking about proper Social Security planning. And I'll just give them a tiny little tidbit. Most people don't realize this, but there's currently over 740 different combinations that a household couple could plan their Social Security and retirement. It's become a very complex system from what it used to be 40 or 50 years ago. So
It
looking
wasn't,
forward to
it
that.
wasn't, it was complex then.
Yeah, you're right. It probably was. Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible. How can people just make decisions today between what we just talked about, changes in the qualified plans, their pensions? I mean, wow.
It's like walking down a dark hall in the dark, feeling your way around. I just don't know how people do it without the proper guidance, Jeff.
Oh, that's job security for you.
Yeah.
All right, so look for our next episode to be uploaded next week. Very important session on Social Security. The nursing community, please share this with your community, those you work with, coworkers. It's very important for each of you to have access to financial education. That's what we're here for. So thanks to Dominic and our audience, and we'll be back next week. This concludes our session for today. Thank you, everybody.